After my divorce, I became obsessed with moonshine. Well, one particular moonshine. Monteverde moonshine. And the guy who started it, Marcos Burgos. You see, it was because of Marcos that I started reading about this Jewish center that got bombed in 1994 in Argentina. 85 people were killed. And Marcos' dad was one of them. But that year, 1994, it always dings in my brain when I see it in print. That's because it was the same year that tens of thousands of Cubans were fleeing my own country, Cuba, in search of freedom. They were jumping on makeshift rafts in order to reach a place where they could speak, be heard, have basic human rights. They washed up on Miami's shores and I watched them. My grandfather was one of them. Anyway, after Marcos' father was murdered through what is still the biggest terrorist attack Argentina has ever had, he fled with his 9-year-old son, Luis. He didn't want to live in a place that hated Jews so much, and it had become clear that Argentina hated Jews. So he left Argentina on his 30th birthday and started over. He spent that birthday on an airplane to Tennessee, mostly because he loved the idea of Nashville, knew all the words to Johnny Cash's songs, and had read all about the Grand Ole Opry. But when he got to Nashville, he met a woman named Eloisa Rogers, whose grandfather had distilled moonshine in his basement during Prohibition. He met Eloisa at a Vince Gill concert at the Opry, Marcos' first time there. Eloisa was in the audience, front row. Turns out she played the fiddle, and she almost opened for Gill, but Gill's manager had chosen someone else, so she was actually a little down and out that day, even though she still jammed to the music. I mean, she couldn't help it. But Marcos and Eloisa got to talking. Turns out they had a lot in common. Their love for Johnny, their love for key lime pie. They both wore red that day. And they also had a lot that was different. Eloisa was Tennessee born and bred. 5 generations back, her roots in Tennessee were thick, sometimes twisted. She was a non-practicing Protestant, protesting against the Protestants even. And turns out that she was also the family historian. So when Marcos and his son Luis took a liking to Eloisa, and Eloisa took a liking right back, and Marcos and Eloisa started dating, she shared all these photos of her grandfather, told them how he'd been raided for making moonshine way back during Prohibition, and it was so thrilling for Marcos to hear these stories that it took his mind off of why he had to leave his own country, and he started to dream. I mean, he started to dream big. The more Eloisa talked, the more Marcos became interested in her, in the process of making moonshine, the process of distilling moonshine, in keeping her grandfather's traditions alive alongside his own. See, moonshine was outlaw. Moonshine was secret. It was true. It was raw. Yes, it was also the stuff people made in their basement that could kill you, but what if you brought that up to the surface? What if you put a label on it? Marcos and Eloisa eventually got married, and they moved to Tallahassee, where Marcos created, from the ground up, Monteverde moonshine, the highest grossing moonshine distillery and the biggest exporter of the stuff around. I mean, you can see why I was so attracted to this story. It's good. You can also see why, when I read it, I started to dream big. I thought, what if Monteverde moonshine sponsored me on my trip across the United States? Catherine Lopez discovers America, sponsored by Monteverde. I don't like the sound of that. What if they sponsored the very thing I was looking for? What he had found in his own way. Grace. Grace. Sponsored by Monteverde. That has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?